Hi, Richard. How are you? Hi, Daryl. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's almost Friday, so that makes this a little bit easier. We're just going to wait a few more minutes until we have a few other committee members join, and then we'll get started.
Sounds good. How was midwinter break? Anything special?
So it was last week for the schools. Nothing too special. I mean, I just went out to Pennsylvania for a couple of days, and that was really nice.
No.
Just to get somewhat of a different view than the four
Exactly.
walls of
Yes.
my apartment.
Nice.
So that was nice, yeah. Mhm. But it feels like, I was there for a few days, able to rest, and even like a week after, I feel like I need another vacation now or another few days to rest. That's what it feels
Exactly.
like. It's like, oh, it goes by so fast. But such
Was.
is life.
I will be on a beach in a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to that.
Nice, nice. Take me with you, or at least send some sunshine this way.
Right.
Richard, Marshall, are you both now with us?
Yeah,
So the question then,
Wonderful. Hope you're both well.
I'm doing okay. I'm still struggling with some last minute stuff from work. I gotta sort of finish up, but I'll be here. I'm here.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And I see that Aisha has also joined us. Hi, Aisha. How are you?
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Wonderful. So we have five. So we have quorum. We can get started, and hopefully some of our other fellow committee members can join us as well. So let me go ahead and actually switch on my video so that everyone can see me. Oops. Wonderful. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Housing and Human Services Committee this evening. It is now 7:06. Hi, Bruce. How are you? Oh, you're muted. I know you're probably still getting switched on, but wonderful to have you here. And I also, also saying hello to everyone either watching us on YouTube or any guests that we may have this evening. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 7:06 p.m. and the agenda was sent around, just wanted to give kind of a quick run through of what the agenda will look like for this evening. But again, just to helpful to have that reminder. We'll kick off with some kind of hellos and introductions as we normally do. On the agenda that was sent, there was a bullet point to have Senator Clear here. Unfortunately, that's not happening this month either. So we'll be following up again. It's been a little bit difficult kind of tracking down her office, but hopefully she'll be able to join us in the near future. So then we will also kind of touch base on the resolution that we had discussed regarding the social services, website platform. And a thank you to Aisha for leading on that with the wording and kind of putting it all in really good shape. And so we'll take a look and kind of add any bits and pieces that we need to and vote on it so that we can send it to the full board later this month. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Resource Spring Fair. And then, of course, go into old business, new business, and adjourn. So with that, again, kind of recognizing that there's a bit of a change in the agenda, that the meeting with or the short presentation from Senator Clear is not happening this evening. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Marshall, is that a motion or a question?
Well, it's kind of a question because I don't seem to be receiving these agendas. And can this be forwarded to me, please?
Yeah, you certainly should receive them. They're the ones from the community board office. Chanel, would you mind forwarding that to Marshall?
Yes, will do.
Thank you so much.
I just looked back too, because I don't know, for whatever reason, the panelist email versus the agenda email are two separate ones.
Yes.
Yeah,
they are different. So maybe that's it. So that's a good point, Daryl. And maybe Marshall also a point. So there's the separate email that just the panelist link that'll say, here's your link for being a panelist. And then there's the wider, more general email that goes out to the public, which includes the agenda. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. But thank you to Chanel. She'll make sure that you have that this evening or have it shortly. So thank you. So Bruce, was that a motion to adopt the agenda with that change that I mentioned?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I get a second, please? Thanks, Daryl. Wonderful. And I also see that we have Etta and Michelle joining us tonight. So thank you so much to both of you. Before we go into welcome and intros, can I have a kind volunteer to take minutes this month? I know that Michelle did it in January. I did it last month. So if we could have someone else, please, we would greatly appreciate it. Etta, is that something that maybe you can help us with this month?
I'm sorry, I really can't. I'm sorry, I really can't.
Okay, understandable. I'll reach out, but please, if someone would kindly volunteer, we would certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, great.
I'll attempt to take notes.
So moving on, thank you, Daryl. Really appreciate it. So Chanel, if you wouldn't mind, after the recording's available, please do share with Daryl so that he can prepare the minutes for this month. Great. So with that, we can kind of have a quick round of introductions, and then we'll dive right into the agenda. Michelle, would you like to kick it off?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle. I'm a member of the community board and also of the committee.
I'm Daryl Cochran, member.
Bruce Robertson, member of the committee, also traffic and transportation. And I'm in downtown Washington Heights at 158th and Riverside.
My name is Aisha Ogilvy, member of the committee for 8 years now.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Etta Santiago, she, her pronouns, and I'm also a member of the Housing Human Services Committee. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I'm the first vice president of Dyckman Resident Association, Dyckman Houses, New York City Housing Authority, and I am a public member.
I know Richard is walking, so I don't know if maybe.
Richard's in here briefly. Richard Allman, board and committee member. And yeah, I'm walking. I'll be in a more stable place for the meeting in about 10 minutes.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for joining us. And good evening, everyone. I'm Marielle, and also member and chair of the committee. So thank you so much for joining. Great. So we'll dive right into the resolution. And this is again kind of the resolution that we had discussed at the last meeting regarding putting together, asking the MDPO to create a website or a platform that would capture all the different resources within Manhattan that could be searchable, so on and so forth. Can I just check if everyone can see my screen? I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can make this font a little bit bigger. Oops, not yet. There we go. Share. Can everyone see my screen? I'm not sure. It should say resolution in support of
Yes.
creating a, yes?
Good.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking sideways, it's because I have the second monitor up. And so, excuse me if I'm appearing that way. Again, thank you to Aisha for giving us a really great start with this draft of this resolution. It's not too long. It's a page. So if we could all just, I haven't had a chance to read it, but if we could all just kind of take a few minutes to look it through.
Just so
ahead,
you know, the second page is not necessarily to be included for the full board. I mean, we can. It's just to give context to the committee members so that you can see types of data sets that
Wonderful.
for the APIs that are mentioned in the reso, so you can see how the information is broken up. And then just, you know, examples of what exists now. I don't know if we are going to present it to the board or send it to the executive committee or anything like that. Maybe we might want to add some other things that we know of as resources for types of databases that already exist. So yeah, that was
Sure. No, thank you. So maybe Aisha, since you again kind of took the lead on putting this together, do you want to kind of maybe just in a minute or two, just briefly share a little bit about it, and then we can all read it and add any points that we may want to add before we vote on it. Is that all right?
I muted myself. Sure. So basically this comes out of the discussion that we've been having the last couple of meetings, more specifically the last meeting, speaking to the need for it, especially during this time of, you know, being in the midst of a pandemic, and the pandemic exacerbating the experiences of people who have needs in our community, but also speaking to the fact that there's already existing culture in New York City that basically demands this kind of work to be done, and that there's even law in play that sets open data as something that should be ongoing and continuous as far as our use and development of it. And that, you know, and it's basically speaking to our board, showing that what we have right now is a little outdated and could stand for changing, and the ways in which that can be done and how it can be beneficial to our community, but not only our community, but to all community boards if it's done in this fashion.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so Bruce, I see that you have your hand up.
Aisha, that's fantastic. Thank you. Is there a person or persons or department in the Manhattan Borough President's office that can handle this kind of assignment, or how do you actually implement this?
So I know in Gail Brewer's office, they did have a specific person. Their name is, I'm drawing a blank right now what their name is, that was responsible for technological related ideas, implementations, et cetera. And we could find out what Mark has in place now, Mark Levine, our new borough president. And I think the CCs should probably definitely be do it. And there's a specific office in the mayor's office that rotates around open data. So just for starters, that would be But I also think that other elected officials should also be clued in, because if it comes to a monetary need, then maybe it can be a contribution of various offices that represent our district as far as the discretionary funds are concerned.
Wild guess, how much would something like this cost to implement from ground up?
So looking at, I think that we as a committee may need to do a little more massaging of the data to see exactly what we want people to gain from it. So for instance, like when a person goes to the website, what inputs are they putting in regards to their demographics and what their needs are? And then what do we want it to give back? And we could kind of look through some of the APIs to see. So then that question kind of lends to, well, how many APIs are we talking about? How big is the data that exists? How will it be hosted? What's the cost for those things? So there's a lot of sub questions that would lead to an answer for that.
So the
So
way I
if I
see
can-
it, the universe is going to be all of Manhattan, and subsets, sub-universes or subpopulations will be local community board districts that have certain needs that others don't. Like on the Upper East Side, they may not have affordable housing questions as much as we do. So it can select in our community for those kind of questions, and that's not terribly complicated, because it's like somebody looking for a pair of jeans on, on Macy's, for example. Is that the way you see it?
That is accurate. The only difference may be with a Macy's website, they probably have a product database that is all related to the products. I mean, actually it could work in various ways, honestly. But there are multiple APIs is pretty much what I'm getting to, that are housed by different agencies, seemingly. I included that link on the second page. And so joining them, which is the technical term for how you pull the data together when someone is searching or doing a query, is where the figuring out would come in, right? Like, so how, if a person comes in and they say, this is who I am, and I'm looking for XYZ, or I'm looking for all the things that are applicable to me, that query is going to pull from all those APIs at once and produce a report for the person to see everything that's relevant to them or the specific thing that they're looking for.
That's the vision. That's beautiful. Thank you.
So thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Aisha. If I can just jump in, I think right now we're getting a little bit too much into the weeds of what it would look like. I wonder if, I do see a few hands, but let me just make this point and then I'll, please do share your points. I wonder if in this resolution, we should instead source or call on the MBPO to use. So are you able to see that?
Is she breaking up for only me? It could be
No,
possibly.
no, we can
I
see
hear
you,
it.
Marielle, but your audio is
Everyone.
breaking up.
And you're frozen, yeah. At least you're frozen with a smile on this one.
Okay. Is that better? I've just turned.
Yeah, slightly.
Okay. Sorry, I just got the dreaded your internet is unstable signal. So I am showing now, there is a platform that someone informed me about. It's an app. It's an organization called Now POW. And what they do is they work with city agencies across the country and create platforms exactly like what we're looking for. And it's, again, because it's an app, it's also accessible on your phone, which is really good. This is it here. This is kind of an example of what it could look like. And they've done a lot of these interventions across the country. And so I wonder if, again, instead of us getting into the weeds of how will it pull the data, or while that's very interesting to me, I think maybe because of, recognizing the capacity issues and so on and so forth, if instead in the resolution we're saying, use platforms or, companies such as Now Power, we can make a recommendation of a few that they could look into that already do this. And it's just a matter of, someone in the NBPO collating these resources. It's probably more complicated than that, but I think that would kind of make it a little bit easier. And again, because it's an app, it's quite searchable. I was looking at it as like a couple of videos on their website as well. They're based out of Chicago, from what I understand. And yeah, I just wanted to share that point. I see, I think Daryl hand, and then I don't know if anyone else has their hand up. It's a little hard to see with the thing. Okay, so you, Aisha. So Daryl, go ahead, and then Aisha.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if you could go back. I couldn't finish reading the resolution. I saw the first half. If you could go back to that, I'm just curious. And having not read the bottom half, maybe too, and I don't know if it's in it there, but somehow addressing the fact that there are services that are citywide, statewide, neighborhood wide. Like, I think it'd be helpful for people to know what is specific to their neighborhood, to their borough, to their city, etc.
Where would you want to add that?
So the fourth whereas that says nyc.gov, we could include city, state, and federal. nyc.gov, NYC 311 websites, and the 311 call center provide a plethora of data, but makes it, I forgot that I wanted to change that. I wanted to take out makes it difficult, and just put, but is difficult for users to navigate and/or narrow existing data to their specific demographic or catchment area in a timely fashion. And we can include, and does not include, state and federal resources there.
Daryl, is that kind of what you were aiming at? Because I know you also mentioned something about local resources.
Well, yeah, I'm also talking about, specifically like borough or neighborhood, like there are places like Cloth or Nimick that are very neighborhood specific. I mean, obviously I know some of them have gone to other boroughs since, but just so.
That's the purpose of the catchment area statement.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying is in catchment area, you may want to put to include neighborhood, borough, citywide services.
Okay. Oh, in the same whereas, or let me see. I wonder if there's also a bit here in the second to last whereas, where it says such a database would also empower community board members, elected offices, and their liaisons and city agencies to better ally to their communities and constituents, as well as include, or something to that effect. I don't know if that's, as you mentioned, kind of, we're also wanting to capture these kind of hyper local resources that exist.
I mean,
maybe capturing your point correctly, Daryl, or not?
Maybe actually the whereas before that. So whereas such a database would also benefit all other community boards in their district, by, allowing searches on the federal, state, city, borough, neighborhood level.
Go
ahead, Aisha, please. Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing I was going to say is in regard, I'm interested in looking at what Now provides, but just as a note, the code that can be entered to make any website, database, readable on a mobile phone it's really simplistic. It's just an additional ad. You could either make a website where it can be, what is the word for it? Basically that it formats to fit onto a mobile phone. It's really just like a line of code that you add. But there's also code that you can add to make it more like an application that you download out of the Play Store onto your phone as well.
Thanks for that. I see, I don't know which whereas this is, but it's the one that says, whereas the infrastructure exists, exactly right there where you have your cursor, to allow for relevant data, so on and so forth. I wonder if there's a point here where we can say that, you know, in terms of like, maybe it's after infrastructures, you know, such as, you know, apps or, you know, third party, I don't know what's the proper term, but I think you get what I'm trying to get at. So it's giving the MBPO the option to outsource this to something like Now Power or any other kind of relevant organization that already does this work, rather than them. Because what I'm afraid of is that they'll receive this, they're probably already quite overwhelmed and say, wow, this is a huge thing. We're not necessarily the experts at it. We can do some of this, but giving them the option or the opportunity to lean on, you know, the experts and kind of not, you know, reinventing the wheel, so to speak.
So my quick interjection, how much do we want to be involved in the implementation? Because Aisha knows a hell of a lot about this kind of stuff. And can we get this done quicker than, you know, Mark's office? And I suspect the answer is yes. And let's not restrict them or us to how much they can do and we can do.
So we don't have the money. That's one.
No. But
Or the
Aisha can talk to the NowPow people. You know, it's a conversation. And I'm not putting you on the spot, Aisha. I can do the same thing. Years ago, I used to be involved in this kind of stuff. But the point is, like, somebody needs to talk about content and localization versus technology. So Aisha knows both of that. And some of us also know both of that, and come up with a proposal if Mark's office can't handle it right now, because I'm sure that they're overwhelmed by a lot of stuff.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Marielle, I'm sorry.
I mean, I get your point, Bruce, but I think it's important to know that they need to own this if it's something that's going to be borough-wide. And I think it's kind of being clear of who's responsible for what.
Yep.
What we can possibly do is maybe put something with support of community boards so that there's an option that, you know, for those who are interested in helping them put this together, whether it's kind of, again, you know, pulling together those resources because we know what's, you know, the different resources that exist in our communities, and kind of help them through that process.
Do you want to recommend a task force of 12 community boards to have people like Aisha get together and kind of put this together? Because, you know, it's going to kind of fall through the cracks in Mark's office at this point.
Yeah,
that's an option.
I would say my fear is passing this on. And even though Mark Levine is very tech forward, I've seen him at tech conferences. And had conversations with him about technology as well. But this resolution put into someone else's hands leaves room for misinterpretation, but also that we are community board members, right? And we have an idea of the types of resources that our community seeks from us, or, you know, we are regularly looking at this type of information related to, you know, how organizations move in our community, how government works along with community members as well. So, I mean, and I don't think that it's a huge task, but just a little bit more of a hurdle to jump in regards to saying, you know, like, we want them to be able to see the government benefits that are available and how to access those, and where they might be eligible for some of those things, or, you know, we want them to be able, you know, what, you get my point, that they can put in their specific personally identifiable information specific about their demographic and get back the things that are going to help them.
So what I'm getting to is that the last resolve is that we're looking to the MBPO's office to initiate the creation of such a citywide searchable resource website. It's going to, frankly, it'll go on the back burner for however long it takes. And do we want to recommend that other community boards work with us to kind of move this forward in sort of a comprehensive way, because it's going to benefit the whole Manhattan borough and it's, I'm sorry, the whole city, frankly. Why not? And, you know, eventually it could be applied to the other boroughs.
I mean, would you find it maybe in that be it resolved, where we're including a point with, again, with the support of, you know, the 12 Manhattan community boards, or as you suggested, you know, a task force? I do see a couple of other hands. So I do want to ensure that kind of Michelle, Etta, and Daryl also have a chance to share their points as well. I'll leave that as an open question. Michelle?
Sure. I have a sort of higher level question. And I think it's just because I missed the last board meeting because I was sick. So I'm wondering kind of how we got from like, let's create a Google Doc and share this out, like really sort of easy on the infrastructure side to just, you know, pull stuff really, really quickly and put it in a doc, share it, and then share it out to like a local Facebook group, to kind of this like very heavy on the infrastructure and development. I'm also in this industry. I work as a data engineer at a tech company that sells APIs to banks and other fintechs. So Wonderful. This is not, it's like quite intense work. It's not like super simple to stand up something like this, especially if you want to build it from scratch, in my experience. And it's a lengthy project. So I just want to kind of understand the mental map of how we got from like, let's do something really simple, local, like easy on the infrastructure, to let's build out this like large piece of infrastructure for the whole borough of Manhattan without even testing, without, you know, sort of something that we talk about is building like an MVP. So something that could just to test and validate our assumptions about this and say like, this is valuable information, you know, and we could kind of start small, and like if we're getting a lot of traction, then we can kind of build something bigger, put out something bigger for all of Manhattan.
Sure, really great questions, and glad that you're feeling
Michelle's
better.
good. Sorry, we need a prototype is what she's saying. That's fine. We get it.
Can I
So let me
jump in there and answer that really quick?
Just give me a second, Aisha. Let me go ahead first, and then you can certainly kind of plug in anything I may have missed. So yes, you're right. The initial conversation in the January meeting was exactly that, kind of looking at the resource document on Community Board 12's website and updating it. And what came out of that in the February meeting was two different things. We realized, one, that a lot of the different community boards in Manhattan, as in an attempt for us to see what's the best way to update Community Board 12's resource document, we found that each community board has their own way of doing it. Some of them have a PDF like we do. Others have a little bit more of a kind of more active web page with active links. It was very kind of, everyone does their own type of approach type of thing. And from that conversation, you know, I think we realized, you know, there is a need, not just in our community, but also citywide and just in general, that often when people are in these situations, that they need a number of different services, that it's not just, food pantries that they need access to. They may also need, resources on, like for instance, like the Fair Fares program, or, help with affordable housing. And so it's a lot of different things. And so what we found is, again, the PDF is not very helpful because it wasn't very it didn't capture what the different organizations do and how they can support. And so we then kind of separated it into two bits. One, we still are going to do something regarding the Community Board 12 resource document, which is a separate point. But then the wider point is, well, why don't we think about something that is searchable, that if someone is in need of a resource or looking for something, that they can go on a website or an app and say, okay, housing or, food or whatever the case may be, and be able to see, with a couple of clicks, what are some of the resources that exist either in their community or in the borough. The reason why this is being kind of somewhat tasked MBPO is because Aisha had shared that from her, prior experiences, they have a budget and they also have the staff. I think clearly this is something outside of our capacity as volunteers. And I hear your point on, it's a really huge task to kind of pull all of this together, which is why the suggestion I think is not to have the MBPO do it themselves, but go to companies such as, Now Pow or, whatever, that have already done similar projects and see if they can assist, being that they're the experts on something like this. And we recognize that this is not going to be done in 2 months. This is probably going to be a year-long project or even 2 years, and however long. So I hope that helps, but I'll turn it over to Aisha in case there's anything else that I missed.
So I suggested that we go this route because I don't feel like it is that huge task. We're not producing graphs and charts or running regressions or producing statistics. It's really a glorified access database. So we're pretty much just linking the APIs, and I've been a part of that process of connecting APIs to a framework and allowing the data to be accessible. Really the most of the brain work is creating the joins between maybe more than one APIs. I honestly haven't done a deep dive into any of the APIs to see exactly how all the data is broken up, but it's pretty much just like a huge spreadsheet, which goes back to the point that the current existing document that we have is not comprehensive, is not dynamic, is not easily updated. That's why it's been on there since 2019. I've also been a part of, since the 8 years that I've been on, attempts to do what we're talking about, where people volunteer and I'm going to do this and I'm going to go into the Facebook and I'm going to go into the spreadsheet and it sounds good. It doesn't always work out that way. And I'm not saying that this committee couldn't be the committee to, do it with flying colors, but it's 2022. And I feel like this is where we are technologically. And I don't feel like it is that difficult. The API, we're not creating the data sets. We would not have to populate most of the data. Most of the data exists in the APIs. And then if there are things that we see that are missing from our community specifically, then we can host our own that can be also added in as an API as well to make up for whatever is missing, or acts that in this process that it be allowed that those submissions are a part of that, keeping the APIs up to date.
Amen.
Thanks, Aisha. Thanks, Bruce. I am noting the time. So if we could please kind of wrap this agenda point up in the next 15 minutes, hopefully less, that would be great. But again, really appreciate everyone's input. Etta, over to you, and then Daryl.
Hi, thank you so much. So I am not tech savvy, so I am just going to put that out there. So if there's any information that might be helpful, but I'm thinking that typically before we roll out something that's either borough-wide or city-wide, I've seen a lot of projects that typically roll out like a pilot program. And I'm curious if we were to do exactly this type of website, Aisha, because I really find that we need to progress with technology and not just do the PDFs or the Google Docs. I love this. But I'm wondering if we launch it as a CV12 only, like our area only, and launch it, have it for 1 year pilot, and then we're in a different position to pitch it or present it to like the Manhattan Borough president, kind of showing the results over the last year of this is how it works, this is what we've learned before we roll it out to all the other community boards. And that might, I think, could be potentially more effective and also address like what Michelle's concerns are about maybe we went from one thing to something that's a lot more sophisticated and complex. And again, this is me coming from no tech savviness. I'm just thinking of how we could also hold ourselves accountable, because Marielle said this might be a project that could be 1 year or 2 years. And I start getting concerned when community boards start talking about potentially a 2-year project, because maybe a lot of us won't be around like 2 years from now on the community board, and a lot of things fall through the cracks and there's no accountability. So I like a shorter term deadline and maybe something that's more tangible in like the 1 year mark. And again, if you have a pilot program, then you know exactly, okay, these were the results, these were the good things, this is what we need to change to make modifications before we roll it out. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Etta. Just a really quick thought on that. I mean, I think that's a good point. I guess my only concern is, one, we as CB12, can we have that? I don't know. This is kind of just a question, like, where are the lines? Who's responsible for what? Can we kind of do that? And then also, again, kind of just as a brief look, I wonder if reaching out to, similar companies, whether it's Now Power or anything else, it looks like they offer demos. And instead of, rather, I don't know if they have, for instance, recognize that we're volunteers, if they have something where they could do something short term just to show us what it would look like. And then that could be as a way to say, hey, look, we've reached out to these different companies. This is kind of what they have, and so on. I'll stop there because I also want to recognize Daryl. And I know, Michelle, you still have your hand up. I'm not sure if it's an old hand or a new hand, but I'll turn it over to Daryl for now.
Can I quickly, because
yes,
I'm assuming Daryl may be about to say something else. I just wanted to respond to what Etta was saying.
No, I actually have a similar vein, so maybe you might want to wait if that's okay.
Okay, so go ahead, Daryl, and then Aisha.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the points I did want to bring up was this notion of, old school versus, more intensive thing that this resolution does. And, I think when I first brought this idea to the committee, I kind of felt like our current existing resource page for the website it's like, honestly, it's probably 70-80% there already. It just needs updates, it needs links, it needs, descriptions, that sort of thing, for our specific community. I definitely applaud like getting more technological on this and having it be something that's, easily searchable, searching multiple things, etc. But it does also sound like something that may not come to fruition for, I will say 2 years. It could be more, we don't know, but I feel like our community needs something now. Along those lines, who is it that's needing this information? I feel like a lot of times it's folks that may not have technology or may not, have access to smartphones or computers on a regular basis. Yet, how do they get this information? So part of this, I think, needs to, it's old school, but some sort of printable version that we can have as a resource in libraries, in our office, just something that people could look, say, alternatives to shelter sheet. They take that, that can go with them, right? Because there are a lot of people that are not tech savvy that will get the information that way. Also, I think the resolutions is going to the borough president's office. I think we should also CC Council Member Abreu's office, as he's the only member from Manhattan on the technology committee. And he also happens to be obviously partly in our community. So those were my thoughts on it.
Okay, so in regards to how the technology works, the reason why I wouldn't, if we're going with a solution like this, start out with just our community board, because the way the data sets exist, the data is for the whole city. So it's literally like you have technology that is a fruit sorter for all types of fruits, right? That will take a huge delivery of fruits and say, these are apples, these are oranges, depending on what the person comes in and says, the kind of fruit that they need. What we're looking at is like going and picking fruits off of trees and trying to pare it down when the machine would already say, what are the CB12 fruits? Here, have it. Because it's already in the entire database. So it's, and I get the PDF exists, the PDF is not comprehensive. And for many years, many organizations have come and said, why am I not listed? How do I get on? When is it going to be updated? From the community members, those questions come. The one that's on there is 3 years old now, right? And I feel comfortable saying that the API data sets that exist probably have a lot more things on there that are not in our PDF, but also it's not like I've done sessions just in an hour spinning up API database with masses of amounts of information, like all the possible movies that exist in like forever, so that you can go in and watch the movie that you want. That exists all in an API that has things like, what's the name of the movie? What's the title? Who was the director? All those different types of data, so that one person can come and they just type what it is and it brings up the movie that they want. This is the same concept. It's just different types of information. And those things don't take 2 years. The only reason why it could take 2 years is because of choices that are made within government. But I think the intention of the resolution is not to let that happen. That's part of the reason why I did include, in this time of the pandemic, the needs are greater. People need access. So hopefully that, and maybe we need to add more language to put more weight to the urgency of it. But hopefully that is not going to allow for it to take 2 years when it's actually technology that could spin it up quite easily. It could be also possible that just one of those databases, one of those APIs has everything that we need in it. One of them is a benefit search API, if you go to it, right? It could possibly have everything in there already. But that the work related to this is just delving into what is available in the APIs and how they can maybe join with other APIs if necessary, which it might not be, versus, and I mean, no matter what, the PDF is still up on the website. We could ask the office to update the 2019 document with whatever we want right now and still do.
Yeah, if I can just, Aisha, just because we're almost reaching an hour on this point. And thank you for that explanation. I think that's incredibly helpful for those of us who are less tech savvy, including myself. I guess one amendment that I would say is maybe instead of using website, maybe just keeping it as either platform or database, so that way we're not restricting ourselves that it's just the website, that it can, it could possibly be an app or, whatever, that it can take, the form of various, types of platforms, so to speak. So that would be one thing that I would suggest. I see, Bruce, you have your hand up. If you can make your point quickly, and then I'll take any final points on the language of the resolution. And then if we could please vote on it within the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
Daryl, sorry, Bruce.
Yeah, 2 points. To Daryl's point about senior citizens not accessing the web. They ask their kids to do it. It's not an issue.
I was actually sorry.
Let me finish.
I was thinking more of like homeless individuals, not so much seniors.
Well, they're okay. That's a good point. It should be bilingual, which the API can probably handle. And then
I think I included a multilingual data set.
Yeah, sure. So I would like to nominate Aisha for some kind of subcommittee to make this happen, because okay, if CB12 is going to do it, which we're not because we don't have the bandwidth, but somebody's got to drive this forward. If anybody can do it, Aisha can do it, and I'd be glad to help her, and whoever else wants to join in. But this is a win-win thing for all of us. So I think we need to really step up because it's positive and optimistic, and we want to get information out there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. I don't see the multilingual bit, but maybe we can add it here.
No, on the list of the APIs. Can you scroll down to see if I? Yeah, it's
Examples.
benefits and programs, multilingual data set.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about in the actual language of the resolution that we should include that.
That was a good idea.
Because I think maybe here where you have relevant and updated data for the needs in a user-friendly, multilingual format. Maybe we add it there.
That's a good, because in the borough, Spanish and Mandarin are two of the biggest, and then there were others as
well. Okay. Daryl, you still have your hand up. Is that, do you want to make a second point?
Just, I think we've talked a lot about our hopes for the borough president's office. There are obviously concerns that this might take 2 years or more. But I don't really want to wait 2 years. So can we somehow put in one of the whereases, or maybe be a resolve that they need to get back to us by, say, June before our summer break, whether or not they're willing to commit to this type of project. Because if they're just going to say, oh, this is a good idea, and then they're still saying in December, this is a good idea, and next April, this is a good idea, we don't want to be strung along. If they're going to commit, they commit soon. If they can't, then we'll go it on our own. But, so I don't know how we put that in there, but I just wanted to raise that.
I think that's a good point. I don't know if should that be a whereas or should that be a be it resolved? Where it says kind of be it resolved that, Manhattan Borough President.
I guess it sounds like a be it resolved that they get back to us by,
back to Community Board 12 on,
by July
I don't want to say
1st.
feasibility of it.
Yeah, why not feasibility? Do we give the Manhattan Borough presidents a deadline? I've never seen that before.
No, but feasibility is almost saying like, this is not.
That it can't happen. Exactly. That's why I don't want to say feasibility. I want to say more something like commitment.
Commitment or implementation. But I like commitment. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add, in the office, I know some of us may be appointed after the pandemic was already a thing, but maybe you visited the office. The office has always had different sets of resources, brochures. They have that spinning thing. Even that wasn't always updated. So the office has always had a responsibility for sharing that kind of information. And so it wouldn't be hard for them to run a report from this for whatever data set that is like a subset of this information, and have it either sent out to the library, sent out to an organization, or available in the office if someone comes in. I know that there were certain things, if a member of the public would come in, the office would produce that for them so that they can have access to certain information, even related to our votes, even related to other information that our board uses and processes. The office has had that kind of responsibility. So
yeah, good point, Aisha. I want to take Richard's hand, and then again, if we could do one final call for any other amendments to the resolution, and then we do need to vote by 8 o'clock, please, because we have a couple of other points on the agenda. Richard.
Couple of things. The simpler one, just suggesting how we add the second part of be it resolved. I think it all fits in one sentence, which is after it's the creation of such a citywide searchable debt resource, comma, and request that the Manhattan Borough President's Office respond in ... such a way. I
Okay.
don't think
Yep.
take the second line there.
Mhm. I
Um,
think that's fair.
And
I
I'd
actually
say-
kind of think it's two, so I don't want to. I'd like to
Let me, Gerald, let me
separate very
finish.
specifically in
Let me finish, please. The second, I haven't commented during the discussion. I'm not easily conversant with what we're trying to do right now, respectful of that, and appreciative as hell of folks who are. I think my concern in our previous discussion was that we were part of developing standards for what data would be included, what not. I think this resolution is in general enough terms over starting a process that's less of a concern at this point, though certainly a concern that I would raise later on, especially if we take the lead responsibility for what data goes into a Community Board 12 database. And I'm forgetting one other thing, but in the name of time, I should probably drop it.
Oh, and I wanted to add the responsibility of the chair, once any resolution is passed, is to advocate for it. So how vigorously the chair does or doesn't falls on the members and definitely the executive committee or the cabinet to make sure that that work is done. And there've been quite a few resolutions that, and not just specific to this chair, not targeting this chair, but chairs in general, resolutions are passed, work is done, and no follow-up is done for that. We had that example with the Amsterdam Avenue and Arden buildings that fell into disrepair, and we passed resolutions supporting that the work needed to be done to bring those families back. And for years, for about 8 years, nothing was done. So, and I was a part of the charge of, as well as Richard Lewis, may he rest in peace, of standing on and reintroducing resolutions and insisting that follow-up be done to make sure. And I finally saw it recently rebuilt, which is a good feeling. But there is work at every level to make sure that things are followed through on.
Thank you, Aisha. So
We calling
just
the question?
if we can vote on this, I just want to, it seems as if everyone has had an opportunity, I hope, to share their feedback. We've now been discussing this for about 45 minutes. And so I just, one final point, there was a suggestion, I think, by Bruce to include something about the creation of either a task force or having other community board members support in this effort. That has not been included yet in the language. So I just wanted to capture that, just finally, if less than a minute or so, please.
Do we
Any
need
thoughts
that?
on that so that we can vote?
I'm not sure we need that at
No?
this
Okay.
point.
Okay,
We can do it intercommittee, sorry.
okay,
I don't
sounds
want to
good.
hold this up anymore. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so can I get a motion on the floor to, we're going to go ahead and vote on this, please.
Motion.
Thank you, Daryl.
Second,
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so how I'm going to go ahead and kind of capture the committee vote here in my notebook, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, Richard, how do you vote?
I think you're muted, Richard.
I was, and I abstained.
Okay. Daryl,
Yes.
Bruce,
yes.
Michelle.
No.
Okay. Aisha,
Yes.
Etta.
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes. Marshall,
I abstain.
You abstain? Okay. Did I miss anyone? It's hard to see when I have my, my screen like this. Okay, so based off of that, I have, let's see, I have 5 yeses, 1 no, and 2 abstentions. Okay, so this is going to be going ahead to the general meeting later this month. Aisha, I kind of tried to capture the comments that everyone shared in the document. So
So I noticed that you were doing that. I gave you access to edit it.
okay, I mean,
Either
yeah,
way.
if there's anything that you kind of see, we'll take a look and then we'll clean it up and make sure that it gets to the general body in time for the meeting later this month. So thank you everyone for your for the helpful conversation on this.
And thank you, Aisha, for doing this.
Yes, thank you for your leadership on this for sure. Definitely also with everyone's wonderful input. Great. So now let's quickly move on to, I know there was a point, and this kind of touches on briefly on the suggestion of updating our own resource document. So I did want to update you all that I did have a conversation with Ebenezer earlier this week regarding that document. And from what I understand is that the staff has been meaning to update it, but obviously, you know, there are 3 people and their capacity is quite limited. And that there have been efforts in the past to update the document, but those individuals have either once they were going to help and then they didn't, or they couldn't. And, you know, kind of those are the types of things that they've been struggling with. So he did say that he does welcome the committee's efforts to update the document. I know that we expressed that, and that goes, you know, pointing to the concerns that many of you raised, the fact that we need something now for residents of Washington Heights and Inwood. So with that, I just wanted to see if there's anyone that would be interested in, and it's not like a 1-person thing, but maybe like a small group of us that could go through the document. Maybe it's, you know, everyone takes a page or so. I forgot how many pages it is. And it's a matter of just kind of calling up the places, seeing if they still exist, finding the links, and that we could support the staff in updating the document. So again, it's researching what's on there, updating, you know, making sure the phone numbers are correct, the links are correct. Also, I think one of the concerns that we raise is that it doesn't categorize what the organizations do. So, you know, kind of shifting it more so that it's not just in alphabetical order, but that it'll say alternatives to housing or, you know, food services or so on and so forth. So when someone's looking for something specific, they know exactly where to go. Daryl, over to you, and then Richard.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this might be a good intern project. I don't know if we currently have an intern. But if, you know, they're calling and just rearranging some things in the document, that'd be good for them.
Good point. I know that they're trying to, I don't know if this is going to get off the ground in time, unfortunately, but I know that they're trying to put together almost like community ambassadors, so to speak, to kind of get the word out about, you know, what the community board does and the meetings and so on and so forth. And so I wonder, you know, to your point, maybe it's something that they can support with for something like this. Richard?
Just on that point, I think that would be, if we get the community ambassadors, it's outreach. It's totally on target. I'm assuming that the community board is likely to have summer youth employment workers again also for a 6-week stretch, probably in July, some combination of June, July, and August. And this may or may not be an appropriate project there. Knowing our district manager, he probably also has a couple things in mind for them. So if we're interested in that, I'd get the word in pretty quickly.
Thank you both. I mean, considering our own capacity and thinking about, you know, all the other things that we have going on, to me, that sounds like an appropriate approach. And any final points on that? And then if not, we can move to the next point on the agenda. I'll take everyone's silence as agreeance, I guess, that yes. Let's see if the summer youth employment staff can support with that, or the community ambassadors. Great. Thank you so much for that. So I'll share that with Ebenezer and kind of see if that could also be, again, kind of one of those community projects that they can take on for us and support us with. Great. So the next point then on the agenda is the resource, the spring fair that we had talked about last month. So Michelle, just to kind of give you an update, but also for those that are listening in that were unable to join last month, this is coming out of a conversation that we started last month regarding the need to really be better about being in the community and sharing kind of and creating a space where city services, but also services of local nonprofits are available and making it more accessible to people. And so we talked about possibly, working with elected officials to do something like this and, hosting some type of fair. So I did want to just kind of give everyone a quick update. Again, I had a chat with Ebenezer. The last one that was done, according to Ebenezer, at least from his recollection, was about 9 years ago. So there's definitely a need for that. And he said that was done at United Palace, kind of in that area at the time. It's possible that kind of smaller fairs were done, but I think something to the scale of what we're thinking is what he's referring to that was done about 9 years ago or so. So his concern is that obviously, because that was done so long ago, a lot of the contacts have changed. People have moved on to other opportunities, but that doesn't mean that we can't do this. He did say that the staff is willing to support us on this. Really, what he said is if we're looking at a date in May, let's say, we do need to lock down the venue sooner rather than later, and then kind of come up with a date or two that we could use. We talked about potential venues. We talked about Plaza de las Americas, which is that space by United Palace. But he also brought up a good suggestion, which I don't think we thought of, which is Highbridge Park. Because they also, obviously it's a nice park, but also they have, kind of recreation centers that, let's say if there's a rain day or something like that, we can kind of, run inside if we need to. Hopefully it's nice and sunny. And that it may be a little bit easier to secure a permit with Parks Department rather than, kind of seeking a permit with Plaza de las Americas. The other thing that he said another option could be is possibly using the second floor of the community board office. I have not been to the space because I'm obviously one of the quote unquote newer members, even though it's been 2 years. I don't know how big it is, but it sounds as if it's big enough for something like this, possibly. So I just wanted to share that all with you. Thoughts on days, venues, and then at that point, once we kind of have that down, we do need to start thinking about what agencies we're inviting and what is that going to look like, who's going to be responsible for that, so on and so forth. So that was a lot. Any feedback, certainly welcome.
So is this for the whole community board, or is this just housing, human services?
So this is for the whole community board. So this is the big one because again, the approach that we had discussed was we want something to be holistic, that it's, not just housing, but also thinking about services regarding, the human services bit, which we don't focus as much on as we should, I think, just because there's just so much to do. So yeah, it would definitely kind of be a entire community board effort, but really kind of us as a committee taking the lead. Richard and then Bruce.
Two thoughts on location. I think the idea of Highbridge Park is a particularly good idea to the extent that I know anything about where us 50 community board members come from in the neighborhood. I think there are fewer of us over on the Highbridge Park side of the neighborhood and the parts of the neighborhood adjoining Highbridge Park, which suggests to me it might be a little less served in lots of ways and a particularly appealing thing to do over there. Second thought is, I think, as COVID concerns and protocols evolve and not really knowing where we're going to be a couple months from now, if it's possible to do this as an outdoor event, I think that should be our priority. That should be a consideration.
For sure. Really good points. Thank you. Bruce, please.
I agree with Richard. I think the plaza is the best venue. Highbridge is a little bit difficult to get to. And do we need a resolution for this to include all the other committees? And how does this work? If we want to do this, do we put it out there through the next meeting, or do we need a resolution to say we want to do a community-wide resource event in, what do we say, in June? Whenever it is.
May, June. Mhm.
Yeah. How does that work?
Sure. So from what I understand, we do not. I did share it kind of briefly with the executive committee last month, just to kind of share, hey, this is what we're thinking. And I did get some really good feedback. So one feedback, for instance, was that the FDNY, they want to give out like smoke detectors, for instance. And so this could be a good opportunity for them to do something like this, where they could join and, you know, have a table and so on and so forth. And when I shared it and kind of, you know, again said, you know, this is something that the committee is interested in doing, a lot of the other colleagues did express interest in participating as well, and kind of said, yeah, this is definitely something that we should do. The question is, of course, making sure that people help, because it's obviously going to be a really big task to you know, get the invites out and you know, confirm participants and so on and so forth. Daryl?
Yeah, just to be clear, so I'm thinking correctly, this is with not just the committee, but also like all the different agencies that we could muster up, as well as community organizations. Is that right? That's right?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay. And I know one past venue has been Ann Loftus Playground, but I know that's under construction, I believe, for a while. So
Okay. Etta?
Okay, so just to summarize, so I make sure I understand, we're going to be leading this effort along with the CB staff, and we're inviting all the other committees to do their part by maybe inviting their agencies, their CBO. So each committee is going to be responsible for their own contacts, although some might overlap. So we'll coordinate if needed. And then we'll just invite these people. Is the staff going to help with the actual event planning? Because, you know, putting together an event, a resource, you know, it involves like tabling and scheduling and checking people in and whatnot. So what support, when the staff says they're going to support us, I'm wondering, what does that look like?
Yeah, really good question. So on your first point, yes, the idea is to certainly have the different committees do their part, because again, I don't think it should fall just on us. It's a really big task, and I think that's something Ebenezer continuously stressed on the call. He said, it's a big task, and so again, kind of really important for us to keep that in mind, and really we'll certainly push for all the committees to do their bit, and like you said, kind of invite their respective contacts and making sure that there's no kind of overlap. On your point regarding office staff support, so he did say that the staff can support in obviously booking. You know, they'll have to take the lead on securing the location. So, you know, filling out the necessary, you know, permits and so on and so forth. He also said, of course, in disseminating the flyers for the events. We did not get so far to talk about day of. So for instance, as you mentioned, kind of checking people in, or, you know, help setting up the tables and all of that. That's definitely a conversation that needs to happen, so that we're clear on who's doing what. But again, we did not touch on that in our conversation.
I do have a follow-up, so I'm sorry. I know there were some other hands, but it's a follow-up regarding the staff. Can I go ahead and ask, or should I just wait my turn?
No, go ahead. And then we'll go to Richard and Bruce.
Okay. Again, going back to the support, and you might not know this answer yet, but it's something that I would like to learn is, do we have a budget for this resource fair as well? I mean, it's great to invite all the people, but this will cost some money. Might not cost that much, but it might cost money. And I'm not just talking about the venue, just talking about even the little things that add up, or even like bottles of water, if we have that for people that are attending. So I'm curious if that has been discussed.
Yep. So there is a budget. Again, when we spoke about the budget, it was just in the sense of booking the venue. However, he did say that obviously, you know, we would have to take this to the executive committee, and they would have to vote and say, yes, we approve to use X amount of money to book this venue. I would imagine that there is possibly scope. I know that we still have, a relatively healthy budget, where we could possibly do something, as you mentioned, purchase water, or, fruit, or, whatever the case may be, to make it a little bit more comfortable for everyone. So really good point. And I'll take those points away to ask Ebenezer. Thank you. Richard, and then Bruce.
Along the other core consideration, I think, along with budget, is coordination.
Mhm.
These things just don't just happen. I mean, the idea that if we, all the committees generally point in the same direction, we'll come up with an event that works. Quite a few decades since I've seen that model work. So, whether it's, staff is certainly a possibility there.
Mhm.
Maybe there's one committee chair who would want to be first among equals and invest that amount of time, or there might be a small leadership group of committee chairs, or maybe we could also call them executive committee members.
Mhm.
But how the whole thing gets planned and coordinated, got to be addressed at the front end.
For sure. And honestly, that's one of my fears. And I think a very valid one. No. No, I think you're right, Richard. I mean, these are the questions that we need to be asking now before we delve into something like this, because again, what I've seen, and not just the community work, but in other groups that I've, volunteered with, where you're putting on a kind of a big event and things, it's, it might be the idea of one, but really you need everyone on board to help. And you really need to have a structure in place. So everyone knows who's doing what, who's responsible for what, and really overseeing everything. And so, yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be thought out.
Yeah, I mean, that person could even be an assistant chair or a newer board member who's looking to make his or her mark.
Mhm.
I think there are a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
Just land on one of them.
Great point. And certainly appreciate your suggestion on that. Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, to both what Ed and Richard is saying,
Mhm.
number one, what is the big idea for this? And how do we get the community involved? And who's paying for it? What's the communication? And are we ready to do all this? Maybe you want to float this idea by the executive committee this month when you meet in a week or two, and see who wants to get involved, because it has a lot of legs to it. It could be really, really great, or it could be a big bust. And
Mhm.
you can get United Palace involved, Mike Fiddleson. You can get local restaurants, donors, people who are going to provide water, food, whatever. I mean, how
Mhm.
big an event do you really want to make this? And what's the whole point of it? It's like Community Board 12, we're back. Is that it?
I think that's a good point. I mean, it's not, obviously the ultimate purpose is really kind of creating this space, and again, kind of bringing the resources to the people, so to speak, in an accessible way, or what we would consider somewhat accessible. Because I think, one of the points we stress about is that there's so many different resources that exist, but just a lot of people don't know, or have trouble accessing it. And so the purpose of this is to kind of bring a lot of these bits and pieces together in a place where people can ask questions and know how to, approach these different services. Your point on is Community Board 12 back. I mean, that could also kind of be a slight angle of it, with people showing up and kind of, letting them know, hey, this is a community board and we're here to serve you. These are the different, that could be a aspect of it. Like I said, I did float this with the executive committee last month, briefly, but they did seem quite interested. Obviously, coming up later this month, I can update them based off of this conversation, as well as the conversation that I had with Ebenezer. But I'll certainly take a lot of your really good points that both you, Richard, and Etta have made regarding, a little bit more about the budget, outside of just booking the venue, but also, again, possibilities for, event supplies, so on and so forth. What does staff support look like, and what does the actual coordination of everything look like? Because that's key for sure. Etta, and then Richard, and then if we could move on to the next agenda item afterwards, please.
Okay, so 2 points with working with the other committees. One idea would be if everybody is on board, once we have confirmed that all the committees are ready to do this, a very simple Google Excel sheet, so we're not redoing things, so we know who's contacting what agency and people take ownership over that. So that's one. Second is I'm in another nonprofit where we're divided in committees, kind of similar to this structure here. And when one committee is leading an event, we sometimes have members of that committee visit the meetings of the other committees and kind of do like a pitch. So if we're deciding that we're going to move forward with this, in addition to presenting it like you're going to be doing at the executive committee, we really need buy-in of their committee members, not just the chair, because we're going to be asking for all hands on deck. So I like the idea, if possible, when you're discussing with the other committee chairs, is to invite us, and it doesn't have to be all of us or one single person. We could take turns based on availability to attend another committee meeting and do like a 5-minute pitch about this is what we're doing and get people excited about it, because I really want across the board support and participation.
I really like that suggestion. And I think you're exactly right. It's not just getting the chairs involved. It's also the members. I think that's a really great suggestion, and would certainly, I'll flag that and see if, again, kind of what the other executive, maybe I'll just send them an email and say, hey, how does this sound, to make it just a little bit quicker, because there's obviously a couple of meetings between now and the end of the month. So if we could kind of at least capture those, kind of based on their agreement, then I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so a couple of action points for me to obviously kind of take these bits and pieces away. What I would say is, if you can, in the meantime, obviously nothing's kind of fully official, but if you can start brainstorming some of the types of agencies that you would like to see present, or kind of community organizations, I think that's obviously a head start. We're not contacting anyone just yet, because again, we'll need the kind of the full, what is it called? Approval for this to happen. But I think just kind of starting that preliminary thought process would be incredibly helpful. Richard?
Is there a timeline at this point? Because my initial thoughts listening to this is that before summer may not be realistic. So I guess timeline is the other piece that needs to be discussed.
For sure. I mean, we were aiming for kind of, May, but I think you are right that it obviously, considering it's already the beginning of March and there's a lot to happen between now and then, including, the promotion of the actual events and so on and so forth, that may not be realistic. I wonder if doing something in June is even possible. I don't know if that's also kind of still far-fetched, or if we need to think about maybe something, pushing it even into like August, September.
Well, just for a shoot from the hip idea right now, if our message is the community board is back, that's not a bad end of summer around Labor Day time message, if people are willing to work over the summer.
I would just,
if about over the summer.
Yeah.
Daryl.
I mean, I was thinking maybe like the weekend before Memorial Day. That's ambitious, but I just want to caution, if we get too much later past June, we also have the big community event with National Night Out and NYPD, and that also kind of serves as a career fair or a resource fair in the area. So I wouldn't want to get too close to that, which is usually, I want to say, the second week in August.
Yes, thank you for raising that, Daryl, because that is something that Ebenezer raised, and I forgot to flag as well, because he did mention that as well, kind of keeping that timeline in mind.
So if we could do, I would say, before July 4th, then that would be ideal. And it's also not too
but
hot.
we can manage.
And it's also not as hot, as July and August either.
Correct. Okay. Well, clearly a lot of kind of points for me to take away, an action point. So I will do that and keep you all updated. Great. Thank you so much for your feedback. It's incredibly helpful as we kind of work together to capture this here. Great. So moving on to old business.
I have old business.
Okay, please.
So previously I spoke about two buildings in our district that are very close to me. 705 West 170th and 709 West 170th. I showed a slideshow of the conditions that exist there. Since then, a brick has fallen off of the building. The Department of Buildings had to come in to address that. I had a conversation with them when they came in. HPD is in court against the landlord. I'm not sure the specifics of exactly what's going on there. The tenants are also not specifically aware of what it is they're doing. They pretty much just stick tickets on the door. That's their only method of really updating the tenants in the building about what is going on. And there's things developing every day. I'm in a chat with the tenants of those buildings. More from the 709 building than the 705. I've just started to speak to people in the 705 building. They are not as organized as 709 is, but they are as concerned. The landlord apparently has been taking direct deposits. She has circulated a request for their rent to be automatically deducted and forwarded to her, despite the fact that the buildings are not being sufficiently maintained. I did reach out to a couple of organizations in our district to see what could happen here. Pretty much these tenants are maintaining their building. They don't really have a super, and when they do have support come in, it is just because it has gotten outrageous to where the landlord finally caves and says, I'll send somebody. They've had leaks, they've had issues with the boiler. I am seriously concerned about what's happening. And I know that HPD is involved.
Aisha, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering, is there something specific that this committee or the board can be doing?
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is I feel like this is an urgency. And in fact, thank you for helping me land my plane. One of the buildings was put on a list of the most distressed buildings, which now has highlighted that most of the new buildings that have been added to that are in our district. So where the ask is for us to maybe have HPD come in, DOB come in and address what are the conditions in all these buildings, definitely these specific buildings that I've highlighted in the past, to see where we are, what happens now, and what rights the tenants have when this is the state of things. I also spoke to RENA, I forget what the acronym means, Riverside Edgecombe Neighborhood Association, about the history of things that have happened in situations like this, where tenants may end up taking over the building. Seemingly, the current legislation in force doesn't allow for it the way that it used to, but there is legislation called COPA and TOPA, if I remember correctly, which is meant to give tenants in buildings the first right of purchasing a building if it comes to a point where the landlord is either selling the building or that the property is going to transition hands. Now those buildings actually,
Sorry, just if you can wrap that up in 30 seconds.
Those buildings just recently were sold to a new owner. I don't remember exactly what year, but in recent years. So that's the reason why I bring that up, because of that new legislation that is on the books, which is something we should be looking at. Housing falls right in that. That being said, and I also want to find out from Ebenezer, if anything has come up in district cabinet meetings about those buildings. What kind of reports are we getting back from DOB and HPD when they come to those meetings, if they come to those meetings? Additionally, another building, 65 Fort Washington, is without gas right now. And when I learned about it and I started to look into it, I found that there are other issues. Seemingly the
Aisha, sorry, just if I can, just because it's we have a couple other hands. So it sounds as if I can, and I'm sorry to interrupt, just recognizing again the time. Um, so it sounds as if you would like us to invite HPD and DOB to talk about not just 705 and 709, but also this other building that you're starting to reference as well, about the state of distressed buildings and kind of what are the rights of tenants. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that third building on the
Mhm.
record.
What is the address of that again?
65 for Washington Avenue.
Okay.
And I also wanted to put on the record that seemingly the gas problem happened because a repair was being done, which damaged the gas line at that time, but there's also seemingly an issue with the roof of the building.
Okay.
So, and lastly, rents, there was a report on Pix 11 today saying that rents in Manhattan are up 34.5%, higher than all other boroughs. So I'm just curious to know, where does CB12 stand with that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aisha, for your point regarding kind of the situation with these buildings that are unfortunately inhabitable, which is what it sounds like. And no one should be kind of, living in those situations. I mean, I definitely can see a need and kind of us organizing something like that to invite, representative from HPD and DOB to, have something like this at a future meeting. What I will say is, recognizing all the other things that we have going on, potentially the resource fair and everything else, would this be something maybe for April? Well, it would have to be for either, April or May, that we could invite them. Do you see this as a presentation within the committee meeting, or something as like a standalone event that we can invite them, that's kind of open to, the entire community to participate in?
Well, a good interim step is the cabinet meeting is going to happen, I'm assuming next week or the following week.
I think it's the
Richard
following week.
seems like he might have an idea, but definitely Ebenezer can court them in that meeting.
For sure. Yeah, I'll put that as a point for Ebenezer to raise in his report there. Thank you. Richard.
I think, Marielle, in just trying to summarize what was said, you're honing in on what we might ask of HPD, DOB, or other agencies, and to ask that in the context of the neighborhood, perhaps in the context of a significant increase in the number of distressed buildings in the neighborhood, is the kind of thing that's appropriate for what a community board can do. I'm going to take it a little further than we often discuss in these in a committee meeting. But my vision of what a community board can do is direction, policy, some level of community education. I don't think we have the capacity to deal with what I'll call, for lack of better words, individual cases, whether that's a building, a tenant, a single agency, or any of a number of other ways. We're not a service organization. We don't have the board capacity or the staff capacity to take on a significant number of genuine service and genuine organizing concerns. I'm willing to be personally supportive as can be of any board member or colleague who wants to take on some things like that. But I don't see the capacity for us to do it as a board, committee or board. One last process concern, and it's a request it came out of this discussion, but it's a request to all colleagues that we use our speaking slots to talk about one or two ideas at a time, things that give all of us a chance to respond to that. No matter how great the ideas are, when 6, 7, 8 ideas come out at a time, there really isn't a chance for other board members to be thoughtfully engaged in a discussion on that.
Thank you, Richard, for your points. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly, and do correct me if I'm wrong. Is it your suggestion that, obviously, as you mentioned, recognizing the increase in distressed buildings in our community, still, kind of bringing together HPD and DOB on a more general basis, talking about, again, what things that residents can do and not specifically focusing on those particular buildings? Did I hear you correctly?
Middle ground on that. That's the action that I think we're going to take as a board.
Mhm.
But I can't imagine that if we know that HPD or DOB is scheduled to come to this meeting,
Correct.
people who have the best contacts in really troubled buildings wouldn't put some extra effort into seeing that those people turned out for those hearings.
Mhm.
those-
Exactly.
But
For
I
sure.
think we need to stay as a committee in the broader thing. And then
Mhm.
if there's organizing that takes advantage of what the community board is doing, cool.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Aisha, if you can quickly respond, and then I'm not sure, Daryl, if your point is for this or for something else. If it's for this, then you can respond after Aisha.
Yeah,
It
I
was
was
just for that. I know.
Okay.
Michelle wants to go too.
I was just going to
Mhm.
say, so my intention was to bring lights to the broader issue because here we have those two buildings,
Mhm.
another building, and we have an
Many
article
others, unfortunately.
highlighting that, I think it's like 12 out of the 14 that were just added to this list are all in our district, right?
Mhm.
And I think that we do have a charge and a responsibility. We are throughout the district so that we're kind of like the eyes and ears of what's happening in the district. And I've seen many instances on the board where there are things where we just didn't know that a matter of urgency was taking place. Like the building that Carrot Top in the northern end of the district sat in had no gas for like 2 years before Carrot Top, that business was lost, because how can a bakery operate without gas? But what about the people who are living without gas for 2 years? And I feel that it is our responsibility, if we can at least just say, hey, what's going on over here? We might not have those buildings on that distress list. We might have had it addressed for the people that lived there a long time ago if we were taking that kind of position. So that's just my thought.
Thank you,
Just
Aisha.
as much. I think we're starting to find some common ground here. Maybe
Yeah.
not total agreement, but a lot of common ground.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you both. Daryl, if you can,
Just-
with your point, and
yeah,
then
quickly
Michelle, please.
along those lines. Yeah. One, yeah, I think as Richard was saying, we're not a direct service agency, we want to help as much as we can, but there's only so much capacity that we have. Also, I would say that for this specific thing, I have seen many, many times at district service cabinet meetings throughout the borough that this is exactly the type of thing that the district manager should be, coming back to the agencies in question time after time and time again, getting updates and making sure the ball is moving forward to get things, done correctly in those buildings. So I really think that's the area where this should reside. Also, lastly on that, I know we do get, Steve often gets reports, I think from 311 on like noise complaints and that sort of thing. I wonder if that's something we could get on a regular basis with building complaints and where that's coming from for maybe like a regular thing for the meetings. That was I know Michelle's hand's been up a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Good point on that. I'll inquire about the 311 reports regarding kind of housing complaints and so on. That's a good suggestion. Michelle, please, over to you.
Thanks, Mariel. Thanks, Daryl. I agree with the comments that folks have put forward. I think it's been really hard, especially as a new member, to pick like problems and issues that we can be effective on, but also have the capacity to work on and that fall like in our wheelhouse. I think that's like part of the difficulty of the community board, is just thinking about how we can actually make headway on problems that where we can be effective on and we have the capacity to do. So definitely agree with some of the points that folks have brought up. I just want to follow up about 37 Hillside. As you guys know, the resolution that we brought to general did not pass in January. The Tenants Association of the building next door has been reaching out to me, and they continue to feel very blindsided by Adam Zidell, the developer, who came to us without consulting them. And so they found out really last minute. And so they've been just reaching out to me saying, well, you know, we've decided we never want to meet with Adam Zidell again. We feel very blindsided. Just to update you guys on where that relationship is at. And they like never want to meet with him anymore, but continue to meet with Riseborough, who I think is the building management for that development. So I can continue to forward anything that I get from them. If of interest to anybody, reach out to me. So yeah, I wanted to provide you guys an update there. And just the meetings from January, I remember talking about a public session for this. So question about that one is there any follow-up from us on there, or are we just sort of like, we're not following up anymore with after our resolution did not pass?
I'm kind of watching your jump up the,
Yeah, I know, me too.
the pole there. I'm just amazed. I'm like, wow. Yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
I just
So
noticed it. That's cute.
Oh, now you noticed. I was like,
Yeah, that's funny.
Thank
I had a
you so
question.
much for kind of continuing. Sorry, you have a question?
I'm sorry, I just
Michelle?
had a quick question. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
I was
can
wondering,
Go ahead, Daryl, and then I'll jump in. Go ahead.
because even though it didn't pass, that the resolution was very specific about just extending the times to earlier. Do we know if the developer got Saturday permissions to do construction on Saturday or not? Because they could, just not that as early as they wanted, right?
Yeah, I think they could. I don't know the status, and I haven't been able to check into it. I'm happy to, if folks have an idea of where I could start, or I could reach out to Ebenezer because I'm interested as well. I could also ask the Tenants Association because I'm sure they would know if they are doing construction on Saturdays.
And I would hope too that they would come back to us once they're done with any external development and to get extended hours for internal that's not noisy at all to neighbors, so they can finish the project sooner, because I know that's important, to the church and to other places. So yeah. Thank you so much for your work on this.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Really appreciate kind of your efforts and kind of need to follow up and be a source for the residents.
I think you're breaking up, Marielle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Ooh.
We still can't really hear you.
Oh,
Oh wait, no, you're coming back.
okay. I'm coming back. Great. So my question was, if you could just, I am not recalling your comment about hosting a public session in regards to this issue. So if you could just remind me of that. I mean, it's not ringing a bell, unfortunately. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. And the second thing I had was just from our minutes in January, we said we would have a public session about the armory in March, possibly later. I just want to follow up and see what the, timeline, or if there's anything to do for that, or where folks are on it. And apologies if I missed last month and we talked about there.
Fine. So thank you for.
Sorry, Marielle, we can't hear you again.
Oh no.
But I heard that though.
Now?
Yeah, that's better.
So I was just saying, I misunderstood. I thought the public session you were referring to was regarding 37 Hillside, and not the armory. So that was why I asked, if you could clarify.
Sorry.
So,
yeah,
I can give a quick
switch topics. Yeah.
No worries. So I can give an update on that. So one of the questions that came up at the last meeting was whether we had been in touch with kind of the setting up of that public session. One of the things that came out of that discussion was that we need to follow up with the new elected members of city council, which we have. So I was in touch with Ebenezer, and I did ask him to resend the resolution, being the fact that obviously there are new, electeds in these different offices and in positions, even though most were already aware of the situation. So that action point has been done. In regards to the public session, now that that has been done, it's a matter of one, kind of hearing back from these offices and working closely with Eleazar, our chair, to kind of, as well as the electeds and the interested parties to have set a date for that. So that's kind of, it's been a little bit challenging. It's kind of like, okay, well, first inform the electeds, then let's, kind of set a date and, start reaching out to everyone and seeing if that looks like. The idea was to kind of have it, if I think we had discussed in January, April, May. I'm hoping that we can still kind of stick to that timeline, but obviously we need to see what happens. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, I think it does.
Okay, great.
Can the committee be forwarded that reiteration of the reso? I think we also had conversation about agencies or offices that may have been left off of the CC on that.
Yes, that is correct. So that was it in my conversation with Ebenezer, that I had that conversation with him. And so I will ask him to share that with me, and then I'll go ahead and make sure the committee has a copy of that. Thank you, Aisha. Richard, you have your hands up. I'm not sure if it's related to this topic or something else under old business. No, old hand. Okay, got it. Michelle, anything else, or Aisha, anything else? Then you both still have your hands up.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to raise it lower, but I also did just check the New York City Buildings website and looked up 37 Hillside, and there's no current after hours variance right now.
Okay, so yeah, that would probably be our best bet to kind of check on there to see, if they've been granted that. But I also would imagine, I don't know what the process is once that permit is submitted and how long it takes for approval as well. So definitely something for us to kind of check back on next month to see if that's, if they've been granted that. Thanks again for your leadership on that. I do want to give 2 minutes to Phil. He would like to raise something under old business. Chanel, if you could please give Phil privileges to unmute. And Phil, over to you once you're on for 2 minutes, please. Okay. Phil, I just unmuted you. Hello?
All right. Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes. Go
All
ahead.
right, cool. Hey, good evening, everybody. Just so that I have it clear, what you were just talking about in regards to a public meeting, were you talking about the Armory, or was that a different subject?
That was about the Armory Foundation. So that was the question that Michelle did ask. Okay. She asked.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because that was the majority of what I was going to be asking about. So if you already answered that, my only remaining 2 questions would be for the other items on that resolution, besides having a public hearing, do we have any status update on those? And then the final question is there anything that I and or the public can do to help move things along at this point?
Sure, thanks. Really good question. So at the moment, unfortunately, no updates on the other bits of the Be It Resolved. In regards to your question, in terms of what the public can do, I think, once we do have a date set and that information is available, obviously, we would certainly welcome your support and the community at large to participate, because it is a public session. We want to make sure that there's good participation throughout the entire community.
Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Phil. Great. Anything else under old business? No? Okay, so moving on to new business. anything under new business? I have one item, but it's going to be quick. Okay, I do not see any hands. So you just
Mine's up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so go ahead, Daryl, and then I'll make my point.
Okay, and this is just food for thought, really. I don't know if there's anything this committee really can address, but given the horrific events that's been happened with in Ukraine, is there anything that we can do locally, to assist in whatever? I think there's the idea of boycotts of certain products that businesses, could do. I think maybe we could be helpful in that, in pointing that out. As far as our committee is concerned, I really don't know. If folks have other ideas, great. But I think, we should keep in mind maybe ways that we could help the situation, especially those who may be displaced and moving to New York. That was it.
Thank you, Daryl. Incredibly important for us to kind of recognize the unfortunate events that are happening there. Just I think also just a wider point, the unfortunate events of displacement that continue to happen everywhere around the world, not just in Ukraine. There's still a lot of displacement happening in Afghanistan. There's a lot of displacement happening in, Eritrea and Ethiopia with the Tigray violence and so on. So yeah, Aisha, please. Is your point related to Daryl's?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I was reluctant to raise that there's a fire at a nuclear plant in Ukraine happening right now. So it's definitely something that is present on my mind. I think that something that we can do is we pass a resolution in this committee specific to when Trump was in office related to refugees coming to the country and not having access to resources. Unfortunately, that resolution sat for an entire year before I had to keep digging it back up. I think that it was eventually sent out to the electeds, but the spirit of that seems like something that would be necessary now, which is, I think I also saw earlier that the US is accepting Ukrainians, but also not deporting any people from that area in this time. So definitely people are going to need resources and an understanding of what access people in that population can take advantage of. And that was the spirit of that original resolution. So maybe we want to look back at what that resolution says and speak to that.
Thank you, Aisha. If you wouldn't mind circulating that, that'd be helpful to have. I wonder if, again, kind of touching a little bit on Richard's point earlier, recognizing our capacity and the fact that we, yes, want to respond to a lot of these things, but we're unable to respond to everything. But I think also recognizing the expertise of kind of various community partners. I know a few years ago, so the International Rescue Committee, and there are several other nonprofits in New York that do wonderful work in helping resettle refugees. They often look for volunteers to help. And I know, some friends a couple of years ago did that in kind of welcoming refugees from Afghanistan, where they actually went to the apartment that, they had settled or kind of set up for the new families and actually like welcome them and, kind of tangible things where it's, actually like help them set up the curtains and, put together the bed and things of that nature. So a way to help, a way to be involved, but also a way to not, I guess, spread ourselves too thin, if that makes sense. So that could be an option, kind of once we start to see the influx of families, kind of come to our community, partnering with local organizations that are already doing the work as a volunteers or as a committee, we can do something, as an event or something like that.
If I could just add on, the broader intention of that same resolution was to do exactly that, which was to partner with organizations that work in the area of helping immigrants and refugees. New Sanctuary Coalition actually came to our committee meeting to ask for that kind of support. And the committee ended up sitting on reaching out to all of the immigrant related groups that are already doing that work to basically create like a coalition to gain an understanding of what the needs are there and what they think could be done and how we could support them. So,
Yeah,
but
really.
that work dropped off in the middle.
Okay. No, thank you. And again, if once you are able to locate the resolution, if you could share with us, that would be great. But thank you to Daryl to raise it, because I think it's very important. And, it's about us also not just be seeing ourselves on Zoom, but also making sure that we're being seen in the community as well. And that this could be a way to do that. Great. So any other points on new business before I make my point? No. Okay, so the point is more so kind of a takeaway for everyone to think about. So I'll make it quick, which is, and I think many of you have raised this in various ways, which is, what is it that our committee is focusing on? What is it that we're doing? Clearly, we have a lot set up right now for between now and the end of May, or the end of, kind of the spring, early summer, with, the resource fair, if that, hopefully that can move forward, some of the other bits and pieces of work that we discussed. So our hands full at the moment. But what I would encourage you to do, for those who, I know it's a far away somewhat, but looking ahead to the fall, thinking about some of the things that we can kind of do in terms of the focus of the committee. I know, again, kind of others have wanted to focus a little bit more on the human services side and not just housing. Housing obviously is incredibly important, but also some of the other bits and pieces that our committee works on as well. So just a point to think about it. Happy to talk with any of you offline if you have any thoughts or ideas of things that we can pick up in the fall, because I think right now we're at capacity with what we have going on. So that's all for my end. Great. So we're at 8:58. If there's nothing else, then we can adjourn the meeting. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Daryl. Can I get a
I'll
second?
second it.
Thank you, Ada. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for bearing with my internet troubles this evening. Appreciate your patience.
Have a
Thanks,
good night,
Maria.
everyone.